Being both British and old, I'm almost duty-bound to make up a joke about the BBC's ill-tenured 1990 soap opera El Dorado and connect it to this game. But rather than make the effort of doing an actual joke, I've decided to go all Stuart Lee and just to mention its name in the intro and let people decide whether they want to snigger or stare glumly at the screen. I'm suspecting it'll be about 95% stare glumly at the screen. A golden intro idea, that. As golden as the mythical city itself. Yes, the finding of this mysterious moneyed metal metropolis is, of course, the basis of the plot of Road to El Dorado, an animated Dreamworks musical. Road to El Dorado is the story of two Spanish 16th century shysters called Miguel and Tulio, as they swindle a map of the route to the mysterious El Dorado in the Americas. They set out to discover untold wealth whilst pursued by conquistador Hernan Cortes, who was a very real first phase colonizer of the New World. Miguel and Tulio find the gold-laden city, along with a native tribe who believe them to be gods. The natives are led by human sacrifice-happy high priest Tazikal Khan, who is in the plainest terms a right wrong'un. I mean, he likes human sacrifices. The pair of friends will have their morality and friendship tested. Will they loot the city or maintain its precious isolation and head off for further adventures instead with their new friends Shell and Alvito the horse? As it's a kids' film, I think you know the answer there. Road to El Dorado released in the run-up to Easter in that favourite year of Jarvis Cocker, the year 2000. Among its voice cast were Tobin Bell, Jim Cummings, Rosie Perez, Kenneth Branagh and Kevin Kline, with Elton John joining the tomfoolery as a singing narrator. Hans Zimmer, already on a roll that year with the stunning score to Gladiator, produced another fine effort with this movie's soundtrack, but the critical reaction to the movie was best described as middling. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of just 49%. At the box office, Road to El Dorado didn't perform very well. It made a $76 million worldwide gross on a production budget of about $95 million. Ouch. It's a movie that is probably best remembered from its home release and its streaming and its showing on the telly. It has its fans. So while the movie didn't bring home the gold, how about the video game? Or should I say, video games, as there were two. Both titles were released by Ubisoft under the title of Gold and Glory: The Road to El Dorado, with a graphic adventure being released for the PlayStation and PC and a 2D platformer coming out for the Game Boy Color. While I'm concentrating on the Game Boy Color one today, let's have the briefest of dalliances with its bigger brother. This game was also planned to come out on the Dreamcast and the PlayStation 2, but after the movie proved to be as popular as a Mr. Beast and Logan Paul meet and greet at an old people's home, it was cancelled toot sweet. It's very much a You've Got Monkey Island at Home type affair that apparently had quite a rushed development cycle. The general consensus is that although it extrapolated events in the movie for the younger audience, that it's very short and very slow. CMVG gave it a 3 out of 5, calling it good fun, but not the biggest adventure out there. And so, on to the main feast. How about that Game Boy Color game then? Well, it was developed for Ubisoft by Planet Interactive Development. Planet Interactive Development were a Game Boy Color specialist who did a whole lot of licensed fare on the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance, and no doubt I'll be returning to their goods in the future unless I die, and I might well do. This game featured a thing I'd never heard of before called Ubi Key support, which apparently unlocks secrets by interacting with other Ubisoft games. When found in an Ubisoft game, it can be transferred using the infrared sensor to another Game Boy Color with a compatible game in it. And what does it do? Well, it unlocks secret content that is otherwise inaccessible. games that featured support include titles as diverse as Carl Lewis Athletics 2000, the Game Boy Color port of Rayman, and Inspector Gadget Operation Mad Cactus. Interesting and indeed, in a way, quite clever marketing, though it didn't last, and I suspect that they got rid of it pretty sharpish and no one ever used it. For the most part, Road to El Dorado is a straightforward 2D Game Boy Color platformer. You'll troop about collecting coins and fighting or avoiding enemies in the hope of finding the level's conclusion. So far, so bland, but nothing that is too offensive for fans of the genre. The stages are fairly sprawling with good verticality as well as being quite long horizontally. There's also doorways to walk through which will either take you to smaller rooms or an entire new layer of level. Some of these portals are quite difficult to spot, particularly in the more rural areas. I can't fault the size of these levels, and while most obviously take you from one side of the map to the other, some of them are a little bit more maze-like and quite complex. It's quite easy to get stumped towards the end of the game, partly due to the design of the game and partly due to how consistent the asset usage is. While the levels look distinct from each other, the familiarity of each screen within those stages may leave you a bit befuddled by the title's closing stages. Every few levels or so, the platforming is broken up by some sort of minigame, be it a boss battle, a Crash Bandicoot-style chase sequence, and even a spot of ancient Mesoamerican ball gamery. What larks! There's even a section that looks suspiciously like that annoying first level in the Back to the Future 3 game on the Mega Drive, but it's thankfully a lot shorter and easier and doesn't make you want to eat thumbtacks. You can select between Tulio or Miguel at the start of each level, but really there's not a great deal of difference between them at all, apart from Miguel looking more like Chad Kroeger from Nickelback. If you're a fan of Nickelback, always choose Miguel. They both run, jump, climb, swish a cutlass in a fluid animation style with a strong flavour of the Genesis Aladdin game to it. Animation is definitely not something that you can fault the game for. It looks pretty nice. You can collect a lot of gold throughout the adventure too. There are coins and sacks of bullion strewn everywhere, to the point where you wonder why they're bothering to risk high seas adventure and mauling by jungle beasts to find this city that may or may not exist. Just stay on the streets of Spain collecting all these coins. For every 1,000 points achieved, you'll get a bonus life. You can have as many as 5 hit points per life should you collect the hidden vials, and you may well need them. Enemies are numerous and easily dealt with for the most part, but they can appear with little warning and cause damage to your chosen Spaniard, and I'll probably have to give a special mention to the birds and the bats, who are flying bastards. You see, they are very difficult to hit, and they are very difficult to dodge when they dive bomb you too. There's sometimes a little bit of lag in the controls, but I can't work out whether that's a fault with the game or the emulator that I was playing it on, so I won't be a big Billy Pissy Pants about it. Road to El Dorado isn't a bad game. It's very competent, it's just a little bit dull. It's like a decent politician, or an episode of My Family, or a David Gray album. It's quite lengthy, but is there enough to engage you on a really long car journey without wanting to turn it off well before the end? Probably not. I didn't make it to the end of the game. It certainly doesn't grip you like one of the Fat Plumber's adventures, that's for sure. Road to El Dorado is very bleh. CMVG gave it a 3 out of 5 in October 2000. They declared it as really easy to finish and decried the lack of inspiration, taking particular exception to Miguel and Tulio being able to stand on clouds. Clouds are made of water vapour. Can't they understand this? Now, to me, that sounds like they've had an axe to grind about platform games since time immemorial, but I'll leave them to it. IGN reviewed it in June 2000, and they said it's all decent, but much like the movie, it's second-rate entertainment. They gave it a 5 out of 10. So there you have it then. Both movie and game set out for greatness, but in the end they proved to be fool's gold. That'll do for an ending, won't it? No, well, I'm leaving anyway. Like, subscribe. Okay, thanks, bye.